Now, we can only work on hindsight, what we saw him do last year, and hope he'll do something this year. Many citizens are wondering whether or not we're going to see the tax burden being eased, particularly on the middle to higher income levels.
Well, we do have, besides hindsight, we do have the hints that were given in the medium-term budget speech, as well as the State of the Nation address. As far as tax rates are concerned, I don't think there'll be any major changes. There may be some fiscal relief for inflation, for fiscal drag, but otherwise I don't think there'll be any major fireworks. We do know that there are some tax concessions, about 20 billion rands worth of tax concessions in the pipeline in an effort to try to boost the economy and job creation.
I mean, obviously, in the previous year, coming out of a recession, the focus was on how the government would create safety nets for the poor and also how it could provide jobs through major infrastructure spend. And so it was apparent that there weren't going to be major tax cuts, but we did see some moderate tax relief, particularly, as I'm saying, for those who are regarded as lower income earners. Are we likely to see more of the same?
Pretty much so. You know, any real tax relief will be geared towards the lower income, probably not so much to middle level, and certainly not on the higher level. If anything, there'll be nominal relief for inflation only, but real relief, as you say, will be geared towards the lower earners.
What about these concessions that you're talking about? I know that many of the higher earners pay very high medical aid contributions, and yes, they've benefited from some sort of tax credit, but there's a sense that we need more.
Yes, you do. You know, the issue of job creation and growth of the economy, that's all part and parcel of reduction in tax rates. But the actual tax incentives, the targeted tax incentives that were announced in the State of the Nation address will be geared towards the manufacturing sector. And of course, there's 10 billion rands set aside by the IDC that will be set aside over 5 years to promote growth-orientated projects.
Okay, so for the consumer is what I'm concerned about, because obviously we do know about companies being incentivized to hire younger workers, and the wage fund that was referred to, the job fund as well. But what happens for the individual taxpayer? Where are we going to see those concessions? The
concessions, really, I don't see that many concessions for the individuals. There'll be the usual, if anything, there'll be the usual increase in the sin taxes. And other than that, the concessions for individuals will be restricted mainly to a drop in rates, but really a nominal drop, simply to cater for
any movement on
inflation.
Things like capital gains. I mean, the threshold on tax-free savings was introduced, but really benefiting those who are regarded as over 65, for instance, the retired.
Yes. Same thing. It'll be geared mainly towards that. As far as capital gains tax is concerned, no expected increase in the rate of capital gains tax, and there'll be the annual increase for exclusions as far as capital gains tax limits are concerned, but again, really only adjusted for inflation.
All right. Now, there's been talk since the days of Trevor Manuel of a need for some sort of mandatory savings scheme, a national savings fund type initiative. Are we likely to hear anything about that?
The President did mention something about the national social security proposals. Some years back, in some past budgets, there was some talk about a kind of a centralized provident fund, something along the lines of what they've had in Singapore, the central provident fund in Singapore. And that helped to create social stability, and also was a social security type of scheme which broadened out to improve savings, financing of houses, education, medical care. We may see something like that. In Singapore, what they did was there were contributions that were mandatory from employers and employees, about 20%, 16% in that type of range. But it varied according to the economy. If the economy was weak, then the contributions would go down. But the important thing there was no cross-subsidization. Whatever you contributed was earmarked for you. And that money was earmarked for your retirement, but was also able to use to finance your house, for example. And it was used to very good effect in Singapore. to increase house ownership.
So we might get a bit more clarity in the coming days. Carbon taxes, obviously, in the midst of this climate change agenda, has gained a lot of momentum.
Yes,
and we're seeing
yes.
that new vehicles
Yes.
sales reflecting a tax of some sort. Are we
Yes,
likely to
yes.
see any concessions on that front?
I don't think so. You know, there's a carbon emissions tax which is levied on new car sales, but carbon taxes as a whole, which is philosophically trying to dissuade people from particular behavior and manufacturing business type behavior, which would cause harm to the carbon volume in that, or increase the carbon in the air. The trick there is to try to introduce that kind of tax without harming your competitiveness and harming the particular industries. The emphasis on carbon taxes has not been well received by the developing world, because in principle the developing world is saying to the developed world, well, you polluted the world first to develop your economies. Now when we're trying to develop our economies, you're telling us, well, that we can't. So there's a whole debate on how do you introduce this carbon tax without harming your competitiveness and harming industries that you currently have.
We're pressed for time, but a tax ombudsman, many South Africans have been really frustrated by the bureaucracy of SARS.
Yes.
Are we likely to get any sort of decision in that regard?
There are already proposals for a tax ombudsman. Exactly how that tax ombudsman will be chosen, and out of how the tax ombudsman will work, and in the parameters of dealing with complaints, we still have to get the detail.
Okay.